Good morning or afternoon, depending on your time zone, and thank you for joining us on this SAG-AFTRA live stream on YouTube. To stay informed about all of our live stream and video events, we invite you to subscribe to this channel. You can do that right now. Today, we present the President's Task Force on Education, Outreach, and Engagement live stream, Smartphone Studio 2, Getting Started in Post-Production with Final Cut Pro. We'll be pausing throughout as we have with us Courtney Nimmersheim and Nicole Pancino, who are here today to translate the programming into American Sign Language. Courtney and Nicole will be switching off periodically throughout today's discussion. The presentation will begin momentarily. If you have questions that you'd like to direct to today's guests, please email pteoe@sagaftra.org. That's pteoe@sagaftra.org. As a reminder, today's program is being recorded and you can watch the replay right here on SAG-AFTRA's YouTube channel, along with more great content. Please note that SAG-AFTRA does not endorse any product or service, and what you're viewing here today doesn't constitute an endorsement by the union. Now, please give a warm welcome to today's host, SAG-AFTRA President Gabrielle Carteris.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is a great seminar we're going to be doing. It's a special presentation and discussion actually focused on learning the basics of editing with the professional post-production software, Final Cut Pro. You know, this presentation is actually a follow-up to last week's really successful, I thought, informative program, Smartphone Studio 1 presentation. There was so much buzz about it afterwards, so I'm so happy that we're able to actually go on to do Smartphone Studio 2. We're going to present a look into the post-production process for each of you who are interested in learning on how to edit your own content and self-tape videos. If you missed last week's segment, it's important. You can actually watch it again on the SAG-AFTRA YouTube channel. Today, our guests will walk through on how to import your footage, make edits on your timeline, do some simple color correction, sound polishing, add any titles or graphics you'd like, and then export the finished project. And whether you want to cut your own self-tapes or start editing your own content, we're going to show you how easy it is to use this powerful software. And it's empowering. So I'm glad you're here. I want to first, before I even go any further, welcome SAG-AFTRA's Executive Vice President, Rebecca Damon. Hi, Rebecca. Welcome.
Thank you, Gabrielle. This is
so
exciting.
I know, it's so good. For those of you who are creating your own content at home, I just want to invite you to take a look at our new micro-budget project agreement. It's something that we really worked hard to make happen. It's something that you can find on our portal at sagaftra.org/micro. That is sagaftra.org/micro. This new agreement was designed to provide a streamlined signatory process for independent producers, which many of you are. It's a great resource to use as a reference and to find out if your project qualifies. So with that said, we have two esteemed professionals with us today. We really appreciate them being here. We have Aubrey Mozino and Sam Mestman. Aubrey is, as you know, the vice chair of SAG-AFTRA's LA Local NextGen Performers Committee. She's also the president of the TV film community, We Make Movies. She's a former LA board member, and after 20 years as a professional actor, Aubrey realized how performers are now expected not only to be in front of the camera, but also be multi-hyphenates who can develop, shoot, and distribute their own video content. So through We Make It Movies, Aubrey has actually helped creatives produce over 350 short films, a dozen features, countless web series, commercials, sketches. And recently, Aubrey actually developed a curriculum on smartphone filmmaking that shows how you have the power of a professional production studio right in your pocket. Who would have known, right? She's been teaching this workshop actually around the country remotely, of course, during the pandemic, and empowering creatives to take back control of their careers and make the movies they want to see and that they want to be in. Sam, and welcome, we love having you here also. Sam is the CEO of We Make Movies. He's the founder of Lumaforge and the lead contributor for the largest Final Cut Pro X website in the world. That's fcp.co. And you can find that at www.fcp.co. And as a professional editor and colorist, Sam actually has worked with Apple, ESPN, Glee, Break Media, which that's just naming a few. He has edited or colored hundreds of shorts, features, web series, probably every other type of content you can think of. Sam is also the architect behind some of the largest FCPX integrations in the world, which is very impressive, including Focus, the world's first studio feature edited with Final Cut Pro X. His current passion is video literacy and bringing We Make Movies smartphone studio mobile filmmaking workshops to communities around the world. We are global. Sam believes that everyone deserves the right to tell their story their way. So Aubrey and Sam, I have to say thank you for being here. We're really excited to have you, and please take it away.
Thank you so much, Gabrielle. Thanks so much for having us back this week. Really excited to dive into some post-production. This is going to be pretty much just a demo of Final Cut. It's going to be a lot of info, so take photos, take screenshots, and obviously watch the replay once it's up on YouTube. So I'm going to share my screen here for a second. All right. So Final Cut Pro, this is the app that we're going to be doing a live demo of today. And basically, we love this app because it is incredibly intuitive. It's very easy to learn. We've taught elementary school students and we've taught senior citizens over the course of literally just a few hours how to actually start cutting their own content and their own materials. So this is a program that is for Mac only, but we, again, love it because it is the easiest editing software we think to get started learning on. If you don't have a Mac, there are plenty of other options out there, of course. There's DaVinci Resolve, there's Premiere. So there are other options. You just might find that there's a much steeper learning curve to getting started with those programs, which is why we are going to focus on Final Cut Pro today. So this is just some of the stuff that you can do with this program. And with a very, very easy Google search, there is a free 90-day trial right now that you can take advantage of. So no excuse to not start getting to start diving in. So let's just get into the app here. I'm gonna switch over. Okie doke. So I've just opened up the app Final Cut right here. So this is the sort of the screen that you're gonna see. The first thing that we have to do is start getting our media or our clips into Final Cut to start editing them. So the first step in doing that is I'm going to go up here to my file menu. I'm going to go File, New, and I'm going to select Library. Now, library is basically the folder or bin or container, sort of the overarching place where your media is going to live for different content that is sort of divided by theme. So for instance, if I was editing, if I knew that I tend to edit all my self-tapes at home, but I'm also editing a short film that I'm working on, I would probably have two different libraries. One library for all of my self-tape auditions, and then a second separate library for all of the media that's related to the short film that I'm working on. So in this case, I'm gonna be showing you a demo on how to edit some self-tape clips. So I'm gonna call this library self-tapes, because that's the media we're gonna be working with. And by default, Final Cut saves your libraries in your movies folder here. So you should be able to easily find it if you need to figure out where those libraries live. They're in the movies folder by default. So I'm gonna hit save. And now you can see Final Cut's created this library up here. Next step is I'm gonna go back up to the file menu, go to new again, and go to event. Now, an event, I like to sort of label these events based on the name of the particular audition I'm working with. So this is basically a subfolder or subcontainer within the library. So I like to have a separate event though for each self-tape audition that I have. So I like to name them based on the type of audition. So I'm gonna be working on a commercial audition today. So I'm gonna name this event commercial audition, and then I'm just gonna put the date just so I know exactly which event this is if I need to go back to it for any reason. So I'm gonna hit okay. Now we're almost ready to start editing. The last sort of step is to get our actual clips into Final Cut. So there's a couple ways to do that. The first one is you can hit this import media button right here. And it's going to bring up a sort of a browser window that you can search for your media this way. But I think there's a much easier and sort of faster way to get it in here. So I'm going to go down to my Finder, which is down here in the corner. This is sort of your file media manager on your Mac. I'm going to open up my Finder window. And I shot my commercial audition on my smartphone, like we sort of talked about last week. And I've already airdropped my files from my audition to my Mac. And I just tend to do that because I think it's the easiest way. You don't have to have cords. So I airdropped my clips from my audition to my Mac. And whenever you airdrop something, that automatically goes to your downloads folder. So that's where I'm going to be looking for those clips. And this is already selected. So you can see the last 3 clips that I already imported are at the top here. And these are the 2 takes and my slate. So what I'm going to do is push Shift, and I'm going to click all 3 of those. So they're all highlighted, and then really easy, just going to drag it over to this import media area and release it. And then there you go. You can see all of those clips are now imported into Final Cut, and we're ready to start actually doing some editing. So now, as I just sort of move my cursor through, you can see this sort of scrubbing effect. That's a really, really neat feature of Final Cut. Basically, it allows you to sort of preview your clips before you even bring them down here, which is called the timeline. And this is where you're actually going to be doing the cutting or the trimming or rearranging. So I can sort of start to preview my clips up here, see what I might want to use, what I might want to cut out or trim out. And I think I'm ready to start editing, but all we have to do is create the last sort of step after new library, new event. The last thing is new project. So I'm going to click new project here. And this is typically what I name this project is whatever casting sort of asks you to label that exported final movie file name as. So in this case, casting asked me to put my name and then the name of the role. So that was Car Shopper. So that's going to be my project name. I'm going to be editing my, my audition for the role of Car Shopper. So I'm going to hit OK. And now you can see the sort of film strip timeline has appeared down below here. So I'm going to start looking through my clips, and I'm going to start watching this one. All right, so I can sort of see that there's a lot of sort of dead air here at the beginning of this clip. I probably don't want to include all of that dead air because it takes a while for it to sort of get to the part where I'm actually speaking. So I'm going to hover my cursor sort of approximately where I think I want it to start. Doesn't need to be exact. We can do some refining and fine tuning in a second, but I'm just going to sort of guess about here. And then I'm going to set an in point. I'm going to press the I key, I for in, pretty easy to remember. So I'm going to press the I key. And you can see where my cursor was is a yellow line now. Now I'm going to go to the end and sort of figure out where I want the clip to end. So I can sort of see here my eyes have gone off camera now. Probably don't want to include that in my self-tape audition. I probably want to end it a few frames back. So I'm going to see, all right, right about here probably is where a good place is. So I'm going to press now the O key, O for out. So I for in, O for out to set those in and out points. So now you can see I have a yellow frame around the clip that I set those starting and ending points to. Now all I have to do to drag it into the timeline is click and drag it right down here. I'm going to let it go. And now I can hit the space bar and you can see it starts playing back. So, all right, I've got my first clip into the timeline. Now I'm going to go to my second clip. There are 2 different scenes that I had to do for this audition. In this one, you can see I'm sort of doing some paperwork, but instead of setting in and out points, I'm going to show you a different way to actually edit this clip. So I'm going to just drag the entire clip down into the timeline right next to that first clip. And now I can sort of see, all right, there's probably a lot of, yeah, I don't want to have all of that dead air at the top. So all I have to do instead of setting in and out points this time is hover my cursor at the beginning of the clip. So you can see this little film strip cursor appears. I'm going to click and then I'm going to drag to the right. And you can see right now that clip is getting trimmed. I'm going to trim it. I'm going to start at sort of mid-action with this paperwork right about here. So now if I play it back, it starts right there. And I can do the same thing at the end. If I want to end a little bit shorter, I don't need all of that space at the end. I'm just going to drag the end of the clip to the left to trim it that way. So this is just a really easy way. I can either set in and out points, or I can do some trimming in the timeline by pulling the left or right, the start or the end of the clip to the left or the right, depending on if you want to shorten it or extend it. And I can go back, I can make it longer again. So it's really easy to just keep adjusting until you're really content. Lastly, I have my slate here. So I'm going to drag this right at the end here. In this particular case, the casting asked me to do a full body slate with no camera movements. They just wanted to see my full body without panning or tilting or anything like that. So like we talked about last week, I decided to shoot my slate vertically instead of shooting my camera, having my camera horizontal. I turned it vertically just for the slate. So you can see this is how it looks. So it looks a little bit different than these first two clips, but this is what casting asked for. They asked for a full body slate without any camera movement. But now I have all my 3 clips in the timeline. Obviously, if casting asked for a separate file with just the slate, we would have to do a new project, right? Since anytime there's a final project that's a separate file, you have to do a new project if they want your slate separately. So we would just do new project and just put the slate in there separately. But for this particular demo, we're going to have it all be in one file, the 2 takes and the slate in one file. So one other thing, just in terms of cutting, that is really useful, not as much for self-tape editing, but something that you'll definitely need to know if you're cutting your own short films or content, is the blade tool. So I'm going to press the B for blade on the keyboard. And you can see my cursor actually turns into this little razor blade. And what that does is it allows me to cut the clip into 2 parts. So if I click anywhere, I'm just going to click right here. You can see it cut that first clip into 2 parts. If I click again, makes it into 3, I can keep going. So now all of those cuts are separate clips now that I can rearrange. To change my cursor back to the sort of arrow icon, I just press the A button. So B for blade, A to go back to the selector cursor. And now I can just click any one of those little bits and I can move it around in the timeline. And as I'm moving it around, you should be seeing these clips sort of be jumping out of the way. They're very responsive. This is one of the cool features of Final Cut, which is that it has a magnetic timeline, they call it. So what that means is that the clips kind of snap together. So if you do any rearranging, you don't have to worry about retiming it. There's not going to be any gaps in your edit, because Final Cut's going to do all of the work for you and sort of reshuffling all those clips and making sure they're retimed appropriately. So really easy to sort of rearrange and do any rearranging. Obviously, for this particular self-tape, I don't want to cut my first scene up into 3 different bits. So I'm just going to hit Command Z, which is the undo button. You're probably familiar with this one for other programs too. So I'm just going to Command Z and undo all those cuts until we're back to where we started. All right, great. So now I'm sort of noticing, though, as I'm watching this first clip back, that, oh, there's a bit of my wall visible here. I sort of didn't have my camera lined up exactly right, and my backdrop isn't covering the whole wall. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, so I don't want anything to be distracting from my amazing performance and have casting be distracted. So let me see if there's something I can do about that. So I'm going to select that clip, and selecting it just means clicking on it, so this yellow frames around it. And then I'm going to go to this drop-down menu right here. I'm going to click this little caret, and I'm going to go to the transform option. I'm going to click transform, and you can see these anchor points that sort of appear around the image in the viewer. I'm going to zoom out a little bit just so you can see it a little bit better. So now you can see here are these anchor points. And now all I have to do is sort of click one of the corners and drag it outwards, just like that. And now I can even punch in. I maybe even want to do a little bit of a tighter shot for this particular scene. So I'm gonna release it there, do a tighter shot, and now you can see this little corner of the wall is now grayed out. So I'm gonna hit done. I'm gonna go back to the full view, and if I play my clip back by hitting the space bar, you can see that that little piece of the wall is no longer visible, and it's just taken out, and the shot is even a little bit tighter, and we didn't have to reshoot it. We didn't have to do any kind of camera movements. You can just sort of make any of those adjustments that you need to in Final Cut. Now, one other really cool trick in regards to slates. And I know they're so tricky, especially when we're shooting by ourselves at home. Sometimes when they ask you to do a pan or a tilt or zoom out and you don't have anyone there to operate your camera, it can be really frustrating and challenging. So I'm going to show you a really other neat little trick that Final Cut can do to help you with that. So I'm going to select my slate. I'm going to click the clip that has my slate in it. I'm going to go back to this drop down. Actually, I'm going to move my playhead over here. So I'm going to select my, my slate. I'm going to go back to this drop down. And instead of transform, this time I'm going to go to crop. Thinking, here we go. So now there's a few options that appear on the screen. I'm going to click on the Ken Burns feature, which basically is a homage to this very famous documentary filmmaker, Ken Burns, who sort of does this camera movement a lot, or does this sort of move in all of his documentaries. And when I click Ken Burns, you sort of see this green square and this red square appear. Basically what this is telling you is you can set a start point and an end point, and then Final Cut's gonna create a camera movement on your clip for you without you having to actually reshoot or do any of the camera movements yourself. So the end clip is where you want the this sort of movement to end. So I'm gonna do, I want it to start really tight and then I want it to zoom out. So I'm gonna pull my end position all the way out so we can get my full body shot in the end. Now I'm gonna click on the start and I'm gonna just put it on my face so it's kind of a tight close-up shot. Ooh, that one. So it's kind of a tight close-up shot starting on my face. So now I have the start on my face and the end is gonna be pull out and have it be a wide body shot. So I'm gonna show you what that looks like. I'm gonna hit done. And then I'm just gonna play back what that looks like here.
Hi, my name.
So now you can see it's adding a camera movement that we didn't actually even shoot, this slow pan out or the slow pull out to a wide reveal at the end. So this is a really, really cool way to sort of get that zoom out if you're not able to have someone there to operate your cameras using the Ken Burns effect. And you can do it obviously opposite, do a wide to a close up as well. So really neat little feature in Final Cut. All right. Lastly, before we sort of are finished with this particular edit, I like to add some transitions between my clips in my audition. So I like sort of a fade to black and then a pop back up to color. So Final Cut has a bunch of transitions already built into it that you can use. You can find those over here on the right-hand side on the transitions browser. I'm gonna click this button here and you're gonna see some transition options that open up. My favorite one is the fade to color, and that's under dissolves. But if you can't find it, you can always do a search down here, type in fade, and this will pop right up. So really easy to add transitions in Final Cut. I'm just gonna click on the fade to color, and I'm gonna drag it over here in between my clips. If this pops up, this might happen. This is totally fine. Just say create transition. It just means that one of your clips is starting at the very beginning. So it might cover up the first little bit of it. That's totally fine. You want that little dip to happen. So say create transition. I'm gonna drag another one in between my first clip and second clip. And then I like to add one at the end, and I like to start with one as well. So we have a nice fade up at the beginning, a nice little dip to black in between the clips, and of course a nice fade out right at the end. This just sort of gives the audition, I think, a nice little polish, really easy to pop those transitions on. All right, so I'm actually gonna turn it over to Sam now, who is the resident Final Cut expert, who's gonna go over some color and sound adjustments that you can make to make those self-tapes really pop.
Hi there, how's it going? So color and sound typically tend to be the places where people get really nervous and scared. What we're gonna try and do, there's a lot of controls, there's a lot of possibilities, things you could do, but what we're really gonna try and do is give you some basics to help approach these things so you can turn out a self-tape audition really efficiently and get the basics of this so that you know how to improve your images the way that you need to. So it's really simple to get going with color in Final Cut. Basically, all you need to do is select a clip and then go up to the inspector, which is this area, and click this little upside down triangle. And that is gonna bring you to the color menu for a clip. And what you see here, this is what is referred to as the color board. There's other ways to do color correction in Final Cut, but this is the easiest and most approachable. And this is where we're going to start. And within it, there's 3 different panes. There's color, saturation, and exposure. Color will affect the color. Saturation is the amount of color in the image, and exposure is the contrast in the image. And that's typically where you want to start in terms of approaching your color correction. So we're going to pop over to the exposure panel here, and there's 4 little pucks within the color board. This is the global puck for basically it's kind of like the master switch where you can go to all black or all white, and I'll just show you kind of what that does. So this is all white if you go up, and it'll turn your image completely dark. You won't typically use this puck for exposure because it's a little bit too much, it's too severe in how it affects the image. So you can always do a correction, and this little, if you need to reset something, you can always just reset it back with that little button up there. And we're going to start with the black puck, and this is going to help set your black levels. So if you see when I kind of drag this upwards, it's going to make your image a little bit milkier. And when I drag downwards, you're going to see it get progressively blacker, but just in the dark, shadowy areas of the image. What we're going to do now is kind of bring this back up until we start to see the detail in her coat, but not, and we want that to be the blackest part of the image should be black, but you still should see detail in your blacks. So this is a pretty solid point for this. Now, we're going to immediately move over to the highlights of the image, which is the whites here and with this puck. And now I'm going to go, and if I drag these lower, you'll see the brightness of the image go down. But when I drag it up, you'll see now she's a little bit too bright. So really you want to kind of get to something that feels fairly bright and contrasty, but then also not feel like it's overexposed. And so basically about there's where we might go. We might do a little bit additional tweaking based on how we maneuver here, which is the midtones. This is very subjective. So there's no correct answer with this. It's really just kind of in terms of what you're going for. But I'll typically settle somewhere usually around here. This is a nice little high contrast look. And then you might go and tweak this a little bit depending on your taste. But we'll probably leave this about here. And now we're going to move over to saturation, which is basically how much color is in an image. The best way to show this is to just drag up. Now we're in Candyland. And when I drag down, now it's black and white. So basically, you want to add the amount. This is going to dictate the amount of color. You'll notice there's 3 other pucks here, which would dictate the amount of color in the blacks, mids, and whites, like it did in the exposure panel. However, usually for saturation, you only really need to use the global puck. That's going to give you usually the result you want without going in too minute of a correction. So that's where we're going to land here. This feels like a solid amount of color. And now we're going to go into the color pane, where we have, once again, the global master puck, and then we have the shadows, midtones, and highlights, or blacks, mids, and whites. And typically, you won't use the global correction here, but it gives you a good example of what's happening in the color board on the color side. So here, I'm going to add green, or whatever color is sort of related to that. And when I go below, it's going to remove green, which is what's creating that sort of magenta, because that's the opposite color of green on the color wheel. So, and I can always, of course, reset with this panel, with this button. But typically, when you do this, you're going to actually want to start with the highlights in this case, and figure out what the mood of the shot would be. And so typically, a lot of times, people will want to go for a warm mood, kind of a warm vibe or feeling. And this is going to color the highlights of your image. However, in this case, because she's wearing a winter jacket, we might want to go and have something that feels a little bit cooler or a little bit bluer. So we might settle in here for the highlights. But notice that it doesn't really affect the blacks of her image or the midtones where the skin is. So to do that, I would take the midtone puck, and now we're just going to kind of warm her face and skin up and hair a little bit here. And then you'll go a little bit back and forth to kind of adjust. Well, and now I want it to be a little bit cooler. And this is essentially where you're going to land. And this is, you can see the before and after on this by just clicking this little checkbox up here. And that's where we started, and that's where we ended. And this is a significant improvement over where we started. And that's really the goal of color correction. It's not to reinvent the wheel. It's to accentuate what you already have and do that in the best way possible. And using the color board is the best way to do that.
So now we have our audition looking really good, but we want to make sure it's also sounds really good. So we're going to talk about a really easy sort of effect that Final Cut has. That's my go-to for all my self-tapes to sort of make the sound really pop and be really clear.
All right, so sound can be a little bit complicated, but there's an effect in there called the compressor that is really kind of like a make it better button, you know, for beginners in audio. And before we get to that though, I'm going to show you two quick things that will help you see the audio. You see these little sort of lines down here. These are what are called waveforms, and that's kind of like a visible readout of your audio file. So you can see your sound better by going to this little drop down here, and you can go and there's these little panes. So here would be all videos or seeing your video thumbnails, and go progressively upwards. Usually this is the one I go with when I start doing sound work. This is all sound, but if you still want to see a little bit of your image, you would go here. You can also make your clips bigger by dragging this slider if you want to, and we'll do that as well. So now you can see we have a much better visual readout, and you can see that this is where the dialogue would be. That's where the pops typically are, is where your words are. And I'm just going to play that back to you for you. Close that out. And watch on the side, this is your audio meters, and you can see those are going up. The goal with audio is to get somewhere between -12 and -6 or so, or -20 and -6 really, you know, is really the target for dialogue. And I'm just going to play that back and we'll see where we are.
You're the best. Thank you for getting here so quickly.
So that feels a little bit low. So how would we correct that? Well, there's a couple different ways. The first would be you can drag the levels up here, and that will give you control. However, the filter that that Aubrey talked about is probably the fastest way to go for you, and is going to give you the best bang for your buck, because what it's going to take is the highs down to the mids, and it's going to compress upwards the low parts and kind of streamline and sort of, it's basically a make it better button. And the way that you get there is by going to the audio effects here, so this is the transitions, this is the audio pane, and there's video and audio effects. This is an audio effect that is under the levels menu here, and it's called compressor. And now all you need to do to apply a compressor is click and drag this over to the clip, and you see how these audio levels just immediately kind of popped right up. And I can play this back now and watch the audio levels on the right hand side.
You're the best.
And you can see,
thank you for getting here so
now all
quickly.
of a sudden we're pretty much right at -12. So that's about where we want to be. Now there's one little preset that we can add on top of this, and that'll even improve this a little bit more, that we tend to like for when we do self-tapes, which is this. If you go and select this little audio speaker at the top of the clip, this is going to bring up the audio menu. Now you may need to scroll down a little bit with your mouse within this pane to see the compressor that's been applied. This is the effect. When you add an effect, it's going to appear here if it's an audio effect. And basically what you want to do is go to where it says preset here, click, go under voice, and then vocal compressor number 1 is usually the go-to for this, and then watch the waveforms when I apply this. And all of a sudden, we've got a nice little spike here, and this is a significantly more modified version where...
You're the best. Thank you for getting here so quickly.
Now our levels are kind of hitting the -6. This is about where we want to be. And you can go and basically for self-tape, if you more or less are shooting on an iPhone, this is just by applying the compressor to the clip, and then going in, selecting the clip, and going down to where compressor, adding the voice, vocal compressor, and you do that for your clips, you'll be done fairly quickly. And this is kind of a make it better button for sound. There's a lot deeper and many more things you can do within Final Cut, but this is going to give you a really simplified process to approach your audio for self-tape.
Yeah, basically compressor, another way to think about it is you don't want a big dynamic range in audio. You kind of want the lows to not be too low and the highs to be too high. So compressor kind of brings everything into the middle, so it kind of sounds uniform and more equal. The last sort of thing we want to do before we're getting ready to export our file is talk about titles. So for self-tapes, most of the time you're probably not going to add any titles or graphics to them, but I want to go over it because you might want to use this to edit your demo reel, and then you might want to add your name or contact information to it. So Final Cut has a lot of great pre-made title options for you. So what you're going to do is you're going to go up here to the left-hand corner, and I'm going to click this button here with the T. That's going to open the generators and the titles sidebar. So I'm going to open that. And now you can sort of see there's a whole bunch of options that if you skim through, you're going to see a whole bunch of different ones. I'm going to just go to the 3D. So there's ones that rotate. There's ones that sort of get smaller or bigger. Lots of different options. So I'm going to just take this one here that has a nice fade. Same thing, you're going to just drag and drop any kind of effect in Final Cut. So I'm going to click that one. I'm going to drag it down here. And I'm going to figure out where I want the title to appear. So I'm going to have it maybe be, just for demo purposes, start at the beginning of my audition. So now when I play it back, you're going to see that title appears. But I don't obviously want it to say it, have it say fade 3D. I maybe want to have my name appear. So to adjust what it says, you're going to go back up to this inspector pane up here and basically click on these lines. This is where you're going to be able to edit your text. And so now, instead of fade 3D, I'm going to change it to just be my name. I'm going to spell my name correctly though, because that might be confusing. There we go. So now I've got my name in there, but I maybe don't want it to cover my face, right? It might be a little distracting. So all you can do is just drag and rearrange to a different place. I might want to do it in sort of the lower third here in the bottom. And there's obviously, you can change the font, you can change the size of the font, you can change the, the spacing of the letters. There's all sorts of options you can play around with in here, changing the color of the font, all of that. And if you don't want it to be 3D, you can check that box and have it just be a flat sort of text. But let's go with the 3D for right now. And then let's play it back. You can see it's a nice little fade in and fade out. And just like with editing clips, you can make this title stay on the screen longer by just dragging to the right or drag to the left to make it obviously be on the screen for a shorter period of time. So again, really intuitive, just sort of makes sense with how the rest of editing is going. All right, one more cool little trick. Final Cut, this is actually a really, really recently added feature. Oftentimes, when you're shooting content, if you're shooting a short or shooting a project, you might want it to live on a few different platforms, right? You might want to have it be up on YouTube, but you might also want to have it be on your Instagram or your social media platform. So Final Cut makes it pretty easy for you to have a clip fit different aspect ratios. So I'm going to go back to my clips over here. And I'm going to take this example of the audition. Again, you probably don't want to be posting your auditions to social media. We know that that's a big no-no. But for this case, this is the project that we're going to be demoing. I'm just going to pretend as if I've booked the role. They say share it. So I'm going to want to share it on my Instagram. So I'm going to click the project up here. And I'm going to then select that and then do a right click, go down to duplicate project as. I want to make the same project. I don't want to edit the nicely horizontal one. I want to keep that one as is, but I want to make a new project that fits for Instagram stories. So I'm going to go to duplicate project as. And now I'm going to rename this so it's a little bit different. I'm going to say this is Car Shopper Instagram, so I know where this is living. Now, the way to change it to a vertical video is under this setting here, the drop-down menu. You go to Video, Vertical. So you can just select Vertical Video, and then this Smart Conform is where the magic happens. I'm going to check that box, and Final Cut's going to do all of the magic for me. So I'm going to hit OK. It's going to do some thinking here. But basically what it's doing is it's analyzing the clips and it's finding the dominant movement. So it's not going to just center the frame on, the center of the frame. It's going to actually play back the clips and figure out where the main action of the clips is located. And it's going to then create a vertical video that kind of keeps that main action in the center of the frame. It's probably going to give me a bit of an error because of the Ken Burns effect we put on here, but I'll explain that because it might come up for you too. So it's taking its dear sweet time here thinking. But this is a really quick way. Okay, so this is the error that I was expecting. So it's saying basically that the Smart Conform didn't work to my slate because that was already cropped in. So for that one, it's just gonna use the center of the frame for that. But the other two clips, it did analyze and find the dominant motion. So it's fine, just hit OK, not a big deal. So now when I click my Instagram, I'm going to load this project into the timeline and I play it back. You can see the video is now in a vertical frame.
You're the best.
I'm going to probably delete that lower third title because it's kind of only having my last name on there, but you just select it, hit delete. Really easy to delete any clips or any effects that way. But now you can see for all of the clips, it sort of found the dominant movement and put that right in the center frame without me having to recut or figure out how to crop my each clip individually. So it does all the work for you. All right, so we're pretty much ready to export our file now. So I'm gonna go back to my original project, the one that's more suited for uploading to casting. I'm gonna load that one back into the timeline since this is the one that we're gonna be exporting. So to export, I'm gonna drag my screen down just a little bit here. You can see all my tabs, just so you can maybe see it a little bit better. To export, you're gonna hit this share square right in the upper right-hand corner here. So this is where you're probably used to seeing this icon on other devices, but you're gonna hit the share square. You're gonna go down to master file. And now I can edit the file name if I need to. So if I realized, oh, casting wanted me to put my height in the title as well, I can add that really easily. I'm a shorty, so I can change the title really easily here. But I also wanna go to settings. Under format, what you want to select, it's already highlighted for me, but you wanna select Apple devices. And that's not to say that this only can be viewed on Apple devices. It's just what is a very approachable file size that can be viewed very easily on computers, on smartphones, uploading to casting sites. So it's just an easy sort of go-to way to make sure your file size isn't going to be really huge. So select Apple devices and then make sure under video codec, instead of faster encode, you want this better quality. You don't want it to encode faster and sort of degrade your image. You want better quality, crisper image. Make sure better quality is selected. Now your resolution, you can adjust this to 720 if you want to save some, if you need a smaller file size, but I want a little bit of a bigger, a little bit of a better HD image. So I'm going to do 1080. And now you can see that my file size did jump up a bit to 40. So again, if you need to be conservative on the file size, you can do 720 and it's going to, make that file a lot smaller. So then once you're ready, once you've decided what size you want, you just hit next. And it's gonna bring up where you want this file to be saved. I kind of like them to always go to my movies folder. So I'm just gonna have that be the file name, hit save, and it's gonna start exporting for you. You can watch the progress by clicking this button here and sort of seeing this sort of progress bar is gonna keep going up. But it's gonna probably take several minutes. It's a HD image, so we're gonna let that do that in the background as I pop back over to sort of just do a recap of all of the stuff that we covered. I know it was a lot, but I'm just gonna let that go and I'm gonna do a new, pop over to my keynote one more time. Okay, so just to recap, feel free to take screenshots of, or take a photo with your camera of these things. This is just an easy sort of reference point for some of the things that we went over. So obviously you want to open Final Cut, go File, New, then you want to open a new library, an event, and a project. And this is how I label all three of those things. To import your footage, if you're airdropping or you're even using a cord, if you have a, an Android phone, if you don't have AirDrop, you can just, usually find them in the downloads folder, but depending on what kind of device you have, it might be in a separate one. But if you AirDrop, it'll be in the downloads folder. Then you just drag those clips from the Finder into the file import media sort of window. Then you're gonna start editing, right? Set those in and out points when you're skimming through, drag that clip into the timeline. You can also press W, that's a keyboard shortcut. And then you can play around in the timeline, rearrange the clips, drag the clips to the right to extend them, or to the left, depending on which way, if you want to make them longer or shorter. Drag ends of clips to shorten, obviously. B for blade tool, that's a good one to remember. A to go back to that cursor. Then you might want to add that fade to color transition between your audition clips, maybe at the beginning and the end as well. Add that awesome compressor audio effect that Sam talked about, and make sure you set the preset to vocal compressor 1. Then if you want to adjust anything for social media, you duplicate the project as, select square or vertical, depending. If you want to take a vertical video, you can make it square as well, it goes the other way. And then check that Smart Conform button. Export your file, you're going to click that share square in the upper right-hand corner. Then you're going to select master file. Then you're going to go to settings. You're going to do format Apple devices, and then the video codec should be better quality. And then your resolution, either 1080 or 720 if you need a little bit of a smaller file size. So that's, to recap, just sort of all the stuff we went over. I know we threw a lot at you, but I promise you within a few hours, truthfully, you can get up and running in Final Cut so easily. I had never edited before in my life, and after a couple hours of Sam teaching me this and playing around on my own, I've really been able to edit my own demo reels and self-tapes and even my own content really easily. So that's it. Those are our Instagram handles. If you obviously want to get in touch with us or have any follow-up questions, we're more than happy to help. And thanks again for coming back for the second week. This has been really cool. So,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
yeah.
Really wonderful. Really great work. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm still floored. I told you last week, it was like this incredible learning experience. And to digest all of this, really appreciate you putting this out there the way you have and being able to take the screenshots. We do have tons of questions that came in clearly, from last week, as well as what's going to be going on now. So between Rebecca and I, we're going to share some of those questions and see where you can help. For me, I just want to, one of the questions it says is, I'd like to see if this is for me before I commit to investing money. Are there any similar programs that I can get for free?
Yeah, so there's plenty of free editing softwares out there. Resolve is obviously one that is free that works for both PC and Macs. There's also WeVideo, which is a free trial. That one's a little bit more basic, I would say. The reason why we love Final Cut is because it is actually a professional editing suite. So you are learning software that does actually have professional applications.
And if you're on a Mac, by the way, iMovie is completely free. And so you can start with iMovie. And the interesting thing is, if you have an iMovie project and you're starting that way, a lot of the concepts in iMovie will adapt to Final Cut. And even better, if you start a project in iMovie and you're finding it's not complicated enough for what you want to be doing, you can even open that iMovie project within Final Cut. So iMovie is probably the best, easiest, most approachable free app if you have a Mac. Resolve is very, very complicated, but it is also free. So if you have a PC, you can work with it there. And that would kind of be the overview of how I might approach it. And just keep in mind, you have a 90-day free trial on Final Cut, so you don't have to commit. My recommendation, if you're worried about this, is to start in iMovie. Once you hit a point where you're like, this is too restrictive to me, that means you're probably ready for Final Cut. Get the free trial for Final Cut. You get 90 days with that, and then open your iMovie project in Final Cut and apply some of the stuff we talked about.
Look at that. Thank you for that. That's very helpful. Really, really good. Okay. Rebecca.
You bet. You mentioned you learned it pretty quick, Aubrey, and I know you, so I know you're a quick adapter, So, but for somebody else, they want to know how many hours should somebody expect to really sort of master the basics, and then how long does it take you to be really up and proficient?
So I can give you a really real world example. We've done these 2-day workshops where the first day is dedicated entirely to production, to shooting. And so we don't even touch Final Cut until day 2. And by the beginning of the morning until about, we start maybe 9 or 10 in the morning, we wrap up around 4 or 5. We have every age finishing their own movie. So that means learning how to edit the program, editing their project, exporting it, and then even screening it by 5 p.m. So honestly, over the course of a day, you absolutely can become proficient enough to be editing your own stuff. And then I don't know how many hours Sam is.
It is, okay, so it is a never-ending, unwinding spiral. So just, it's like really anything else. Learning, you know, a lot of it depends on your initial technical proficiency. So I would say the less technical you are, probably the more time investment you're gonna have. We do have a bunch of smartphone studio tutorials that we've sort of put out. But on top of that, like if you really wanna get going with it, what I would really recommend is go easy on yourself and give yourself a couple days and try not to be perfect. That is really the thing. Try and get something done. And the more you can get a simple, easy project that you can approach and just get that finished and then gradually layer complexity, the harder the project is you try and make it, the more frustrating it's going to be initially. So keep it very, very simple with like a couple. We do a 5-shot challenge in many of the workshops we do, which is 5 shots or less, put them in an order. That is very, very easy to learn. And then once you get a little success, it'll be, the learning curve gets lesser and less over time.
Beautiful.
That's great.
Yeah.
Gabrielle.
There's so many questions here. One of them you're kind of answering, so I'm going to go to the next one. But here, what are some of the benefits of me learning the software? How will it help my career as a performer? Is an interesting question, right? Because there's twofold. There's not just making your own product, but when you're talking about the audition process, I'm interested to see how you feel it's helped you with your audition process. But also, I know for people to create their projects.
Well, I would say it's not just hasn't just helped me with the audition process, it's actually helped me with my performance overall. So now that I sort of know what editors have to sort of go through when you're looking at clips, what the sort of limitations are, right? It's not like there's a magic wand that they can wave over your take to make it more powerful or more specific or anything like that. So there are limitations. So knowing sort of what an editor has to work with has made me be able to sort of give, I think, a better performance on set or when I'm, even auditioning, because I know, how I can maybe sweeten the sound a little bit, but I can't, change the way I'm looking, right? I need to make sure that my, continuity is accurate and all of that. So being able to envision in your head how this will, how any performance will cut together, I think has made me really be able to go in there and sort of nail the performance quicker, because I know, all right, this is what the other people are looking for on the other side of the camera. I know what I want to feel as a performer, right? But they're looking for specific things for me to hit in order to make it all cut together. So just knowing that has made it really helpful.
And to take that one step further, one thing I would really recommend for all of you is, I think, and when I talk to a lot of actors, a big frustration I see them having is they never quite get cast in the role they want to be seen as. They always want to be seen as something than how others view them. Being able to make your own content will allow you to put out the version of yourself that you want to have seen, and gives you control over your message, your story, how your career, in a way that when you are reliant on others to cast you as the thing you want to be, you just never quite get there. But if you know how to make your own content, then you get to control how you are perceived.
Yeah, that's great. Rebecca?
That's a perfect segue, Gabrielle. Just jump into a comment that we got about being a content creator, a young content creator, and wanting to tell more diverse stories than what they see currently represented. So like, this is really expiring. And there was a question attached to that in terms of, do you think that this will actually innovate the next generation of filmmakers to be even more inspired? So if you guys want to take a stab at that, what do you think? Crystal ball, do you think so? I hope so.
100%. We actually, we're working with, over the past year, we've worked with students in the Bronx, in several Native American reservations, in Compton, and these are all young kids. High school seniors or younger. These are the next generation, and seeing them able to pick up this technology and highlight, the stories that are happening. We did a program this summer in Chicago. There was a lot happening in Chicago over the summer, and these students were able to capture how it was impacting them and their community directly, and literally document history. That's what we were teaching them. They were really responsible for recording their version of events that went down in Chicago. And it's amazing because this stuff does really democratize the film industry in a huge way, where there's just no barriers to entry, right? There's not that prohibitive cost of millions or hundreds of thousands of dollars. You really can get your story out there on a free platform with a couple pretty affordable apps, and have people, amplify voices that previously were definitely not getting that same spotlight.
I had to say, it's so empowering. When I'm listening to this, I'm thinking that how being empowered like that really creates freedom. And that really creates the ability to be even more creative because you're not held back by concerns. This is wonderful. This is one of the things, and I relate to this actually. So has been it says this is great info. It feels complicated for beginners, not because you're not complicated, but it's a lot to remember. And it's like you said, try it out, whatever. But is there instead, you don't want thousands and thousands of people maybe to call. That's not the way somebody wants to be able to do it. Is there a tutorial that comes with the app where they can learn at their own pace? So take what you did and then recall it.
100%. They're just like I talked about last week with Filmic Pro tutorials. You can find probably about 10 different tutorials for every single feature on Final Cut. The community of Final Cut is very passionate. They're very nerdy. Sorry, Sam. But they love their app and they love teaching it. So absolutely, just you can be as specific as how to use the compressor effect, right? So we talked about the compressor effect. If you kind of forget exactly what we mentioned, just Google compressor effect Final Cut Pro. And I promise you're going to have a ton of tutorials pop right up. There's so much education out there.
And look, it can feel really overwhelming, especially, and it's like anything else. Like I won't cook because I'm overwhelmed by the concept of cooking. Cooking feels really complicated for me. And yet I can finish an entire feature film and deliver this through a movie theater and do all of that. And somehow cooking feels significantly more complicated to me than it does making a movie. So just keep that in mind. It's like when you start something new, it's going to feel overwhelming and complicated, but just think about all the other things you've learned over the course of your life that you now take for granted, and keep it simple and bite-sized. And honestly, start an iMovie if it feels overwhelming for you, because that will help you graduate towards something that's a little more complicated.
Well, I'll cook for you if you do. Your birthday, Aubrey, because today's Aubrey's birthday, and I just thought I'd throw that in real quick. But I'll cook for the birthday if you can go and do all the editing and everything I need to have done. Anyway.
That's a deal.
Go on, Rebecca.
Yeah, we have someone who wrote in who's a PC user, and they want to know if they can import iPhone videos and then edit on a PC, and are there software options for that?
Yeah, it's really easy. So if you have an iPhone and a PC, again, the only complicated thing about PCs is there's so many different brands. So everything's a little bit different depending, but usually you just get a cord. So a USB to lightning cord, plug it into your PC. And usually it opens up this sort of photos app naturally on your Windows PC. And you can just import, it's gonna ask you to import photos or videos. So you can import directly onto your computer from that. They probably will live, I think they tend to go to your photos folder on PC, but just double check. It might go somewhere else depending on the exact brand of PC that you have. But yes, absolutely. You have iPhone and PC, you can drag or import those clips directly into your PC. And then as Sam said, Resolve is a great option if you're a PC user to start out on a free software. It's just a little bit more daunting when you open that app up for the first time. There's a lot more buttons, but it's totally doable.
And that's goes to the complication aspect is, everything on PC is a little bit more complicated than on Mac, which is why we start with Mac. But even then, people feel like Mac is a little bit more complicated. So there's just different degrees of this and, depending on your platform. But Resolve is the free software on PC where all of this would be compatible, and pulling it in that way should solve your problem.
Again, dinner. Okay. Yeah. I just want to ask. So here is a question that came to us. It says, I now have my camera, iPhone 12 Pro, a light, a gimbal, and mics. I have everything I need to shoot a movie, but I have no idea what I need to be able to edit to what I need to be able to edit and store a 90-minute movie in 1080 or 4K when I'm done. What is a sufficient computer and the cheapest way to do this?
Oh, well,
Pass that one to
that's
you.
my world. But okay, so bottom line is an external hard drive is probably the thing that you're going to need. If it's iPhone footage, there's plenty of available hard drives you can get. I can make an endless number of recommendations for you depending on what it is. But for iPhone footage, you probably want something that is a few terabytes in size, and you want something that's not going to be really slow. So something that is SSD or NVMe based, which I'm sure might go right over your head, but those are very fast versions of hard drives. If you have a little money to spend, not getting a super slow drive is going to be what's your time worth, right? So if you have something that's constantly stalling and all this stuff, you want something that is effectively fast. If you reach out to us, I will happily make you a couple recommendations. A company that makes a bunch of them is OWC, and there's a variety of them that will all serve the needs, but I would recommend something about 4 terabytes in size if you want to do a 90-minute feature and you want all the footage and you basically are looking to start an editing career, and that's a good starting size to get
And
you
a
going.
lot of RAM on your computer. That's the other.
16 gigs of RAM on your Mac is probably about what you want to have on the PC. Look, the more RAM, the better, but 16 is really kind of a go-to in terms of a high quality system. Most MacBook Pros have that. A lot of the smaller laptops are iMacs and that sort of thing. Screen real estate or how big your screen is will definitely help you too. So basically, and one thing I'll throw out, if you're only on iOS, that doesn't mean you can't edit anymore. There is an application, well, they have iMovie for the iPhone, which would be compatible with Final Cut. They also have this application, Lumafusion. So if you have an iPhone or an iPad, that's the professional software that's pretty easy to grasp that you can learn with if you have a iOS-based device.
Thank you. Rebecca?
The next one is, I've heard about color grading and I'm not 100% clear on it. Can you shed some light on what that is?
So we did a little minor color grading today during the demo. So basically color grading is where you can sort of fix any lighting issues, right? If you realized, oh, you've set up your self-tape and you're not bright enough, or you're too bright or too dark. Color grading is a way to sort of adjust that in post-production. Sam showed you under the exposure tab, right, in the color boards, that's where you're going to be able to really do that. You can also do some really fancy, complicated color adjustments where you're, really changing kind of skin tones and bringing out certain pops of, eye color or hair color.
It's kind of like Photoshop for video,
yes.
And really it's for a moving image. The other thing too that I really recommend, a lot of beginners will think that color correction is a cure-all for their footage, and it's not. You can lose endless number of hours trying to figure out how to perfect something that just is fundamentally a little bit flawed. So really the way you should view color correction is to approach it like it's something that can improve your image, but will not fix it necessarily. And that's the way to sort of think about it. So the better you shoot your image, the better it's going to go once you get to color correction. So that's just a key distinction to keep in mind. You can go really deep on the color correction tools. There's even significantly more advanced ones within Final Cut. And if you have a Photoshop background or something, that will help you understand how you might affect some of those images. But the underlying thing is, get started with this if you're curious about color correction. And the color board in Final Cut is the way to start. From there, you can do color wheels, color curves, and all these other things. It can get very, very deep, but start there.
Sam, you're very in it there. Wow. I have a question because this will lead to one of the final questions we have, but do you guys have a third session? Do you know what I mean? That is like, people who want to get deeper even into what you're talking about.
I mean, there's, as Sam said, absolutely, we can get really granular with some of the Final Cut tools in there and do some really, we can do multicam syncing. We can show you how to sync second source audio if you're having a lav, capturing audio that's not attached to your video camera, how Final Cut really makes it simple and
we could
easy.
teach you to make a movie, basically.
Yeah.
This can get endlessly deep. and really even a short film and how you might approach narrative or documentary or B-roll. So a lot of it actually, especially for sessions like this, what we try and do is keep it focused towards a product or a thing that someone's trying to make, and then we kind of work backwards to give them the steps to approach that and to use, because there's so many different features, there's so many different things you can do. But if we have a like, okay, we'd like to approach, how do we do a micro doc, for instance, or a small documentary, we would then bring in something that would give you the tools to approach that.
Great. That's
Short
really
answer is yes. Just depends on what you want to know.
And people can still search, though. I think it's an important reminder. You're saying that there's so many people who are really, I want to say, Final Cut pro nerds, right?
Yep.
So that if you go online and you ask
Yes.
certain questions, there'll be many different tutorials for those people who might want to extend beyond just here.
You'll see a lot of articles with this guy's name all over it out there. So there's tons.
And if you have some questions, we can make some good recommendations for you.
Well, you guys are awesome. I think we're going to definitely be trying to see how we can do this. It's been really, your program, what you've been offering is really something that has resonated with the members. And I want to say thank you for that, because, you know, you are helping to empower, and we want everybody to feel empowered during particularly a time when everybody feels very vulnerable. You're really allowing people the ability to see their future. So thank you for that. That's really, really meaningful. And thank you, Rebecca, for being with us, and for everybody to help, you know, for the staff helping us to make this day in this moment possible. It's been a great discussion. And I'm so happy everybody can join us on these live stream events. I think they're very important. Being able to see each other remotely is important. On behalf of the team here at SAG-AFTRA, we want to say thank you all for taking time to be here with us. It's been a true pleasure having you join us, and special thanks to each one of you who've been tuning in every week. Thank you, thank you, thank you for our President's Task Force on Education, Outreach, and Engagement live streams. This is for you, and it's really wonderful to have you join us. If you have not already, while you're there, please subscribe to SAG-AFTRA's YouTube channel. Please subscribe to YouTube's SAG-AFTRA's YouTube channel. Get updates on the great content we're posting. Take care of yourselves. Happy New Year, and we'll talk soon. So thank you.